Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terroussian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Terroussian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And in today's episode, I'm joined by Carl Chouinard, CEO and founder of Extend AI. Thanks for being on the show today, Carl.
Hey, thanks, Greg, for having me.
It's my pleasure. Let's jump into it. So, Carl, can you start by sharing your background and the path that actually led you into the tech industry?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Quebec, Canada. I had my first computer around 15 years old, and I felt like immediately in love with it at first sight. So I really started to hack the computer, learn how it worked, and it quickly led me to creating my first company, which was like doing tech support at home when I was 16 years old.
Oh, cool.
And I grew
early. Very early.
I grew up a small customer base, maybe of like 100 people, where I was doing like tech supports over the weekend and at night. And I was surprisingly making good money for, like, a 16 years old guy. So it was nice. Also was my first touch with building, a very small company in this case, but still having an experience hands-on with dealing with people, selling your services and engaging in the market in that way, which led to the foundation of a second company when I was 19, this time more in software development. And from there, had a few more companies along the way, and I've always been like very active in that space. But I think it's more the potential that technology brings that really fascinated me in the early days. The way that the precision at which you can describe the problem and solve that problem, that really struck a chord with me back in the days. Yeah.
Amazing. So obviously going from IT support to where you guys are at now, we'll obviously get into that product and everything that you guys are doing at Extend AI, but what experiences inspired you to establish this kind of company and this type of technology?
It's really, Steve Jobs was saying, like, at one point in your life, all the dots get connected. And it felt like that for me. So I did like photography when I was a kid, for example, teenager. So I did a lot of photos, which is now relevant to what we do. So we do connect to cameras and stuff. So it's as if like all these experience and interests that I've had in life around maths, physics, computer science, and the brain, so neurology. So for a long time, I wanted to become maybe a neurologist, just to understand how this thing worked. And basically that led to the creation of Extend today, which is basically at the intersection of all of those things. So kind of the dream gigs for me. Yeah.
And it sounds like, you shared at 16 going into entrepreneurship, starting your own business and stuff like that. Did you have many roles as an employee as well with other companies?
Not much. So I tried working for a big company when I was 23, 24. It was an IT consulting firm. I stayed there maybe for a year. And after that.
You've just been, wow, that's very cool. You've been an entrepreneur from the get-go.
Yeah, well, it just made sense for me just to do things by myself to some degree and engage in the market in a way that I felt like I had the most impact, which was not always the case when I was working for that company. I felt like I could exploit my potential more by launching my own business. Yeah.
Can you stop that? So let's discuss extend AI. I guess before we move any further, because I'd love to hear about the founding story and the evolution of the product and everything. I know we spoke a little bit before we jumped on about a recent breakthrough, so please share as much as you can. But before we do that, I want to set the stage about what you guys do, what your technology is, and the industries that you operate in.
Sure. So we are in the space-time optimization space. So basically building AI system that can optimize our usage of physical space over time. So that's really the space that we're evolving in. I got in that space. So I've always been like highly passionate about the physical world. I mean, everything is physical, even like the photons that are in between you and I, or, even this exchange, even though it's virtual, is actually like physical. So, always been passionate about that. And, I spent like a couple of years in Silicon Valley for a CTO of a startup named The Grid, where, basically founded this with a good buddy of mine, Dan Zucchini. And we automated the creation of websites through artificial intelligence. That was in the early 2010. So before like all the big machine learning revolution. So we had to build all of this tech ourselves. But the interesting thing, at least for me, and which led to the creation of Extend in some sense, is that we conceptualized the website as a spatial problem. So a website has 3 coordinates, X, Y, and Z, in which you position content, you can superpose content. And we saw like the time dimension as what piece of content do you show in the browser viewport as you scroll or navigate in the site, right? So you have to make all these decisions about what content do you place in a way to maximize certain outcomes, such as clicking a button or purchasing a product. And so we create this crazy model where basically all websites in the world existed in that mathematical representation. So that was kind of mind-blowing for me at first, just to imagine that within that 3D space that we created, all the colors, all the fonts, all the layout decision existed. So even you and I right now existed, as we speak, existed in that math space, which is insane, right? Yes. And the AI that we've built was basically searching that space in order to extract from it websites that could generate value for our customers. So instead of generating stuff, we're searching a space that was fully complete in that sense. So we built lots of expertise of like manipulating the spatial structure, building algorithms to operate in those structures with lots of variation. So there's, just to give you a sense, like just in terms of color variation, there's more than 3.6 million color variation possible in a website. In terms of typography, there's another 10, 15 million. And where it really explodes is in the layout. So layout is like trillions of possibilities, really, when you consider all the potential positioning. So exploiting that, building that expertise, I really wanted to find a way. So when I departed from The Grid, and actually, funny story, because all my life I wanted to go to work and evolve in Silicon Valley. But while I was in Silicon Valley, I was hearing more and more about what was happening in the AI space in Canada, because of a composition, like we have cold weather, which is actually very good for computing centers. We have like 2 of the founding father of machine learning revolution with Yoshua Bengio and Jeffrey Hilton in Toronto. We have like Sutton in Manitoba, which does reinforcement learning. So we have like this great ecosystem of expertise. So basically, came back to my country, and while I was there, I was searching for a way to leverage all that expertise. And one day I was on a piece of land that I own here in nature, and was just contemplating nature, basically. And I was seeing like this branch moving in the wind. And at one point, it just clicked to me that even though that movement was seemed chaotic, it was still constrained within a certain physical boundaries. And then I started to see how I could leverage everything that I've learned prior in my life to capture those motion and to process all that spatial data in a pretty effective way in order to understand what type of activities are occurring in space, to segment those activities, to be able to computationally describe what's happening in space in order to optimize it. So bring all the power of AI to the physical world to compensate some of our human limitation that we have around capturing the space or physical world that we have. So we have a pretty limited window of perception over reality. Like right now, I have the camera, so I see what's happening behind me, but otherwise I wouldn't even know what's happening behind me, right? So it's very limited. As you zoom, you just like focus on specific aspect of it. We have imperfect memory. So it's very difficult to conceptualize and understand and build internal mental model of large physical space and complex physical operations. And the interesting thing there too is that we are through those limitations, we build these subjective and biased view of the physical world, and we all have those limitations. So when we team up together to try to optimize these large space, the problem even gets exacerbated sometimes because nobody has the objective view. So and that for me was fascinating to say, well, what if AI could compensate those limitations, and how could we extend our capacity, which is the origin of the name, extending AI. So how could we extend human capacity to see, understand, and optimize the physical world with artificial intelligence?
Amazing. Yeah, it's a very unique story about where the product idea comes from and use case comes from. I think, sitting there in nature. And you hear about a lot of things where people are looking at nature or spending time in nature, and then that is what sparks, like, whether it's a new way of coding or managing a product or building a product or whatever. And then obviously the inspiration side comes from it, whether you're meditating or just absorbing nature and whatever. But in this case, like, seeing how nature moves and the space that it operates in, creating this concept is pretty unique. So what industries are using, or do you think that your product is best used for? And can you give us some like use cases?
Yeah, sure. So at scale, our goal is to optimize the physical space in general. Of course, we don't want to try to boil the ocean here. So we're starting with a few vertical markets. We can have like pretty significant impact in the manufacturing space, logistic space as well, warehouse and transport. So that's I think a logical, natural space for us to evolve in. So we've already deployed this technology in the natural stone industry. Now we're discussing about deploying it in the logistic, transport, and manufacturing space right now. And from there, we want to expand to other vertical over time.
Have there been any evolutions or changes to the company vision or product since inception?
Quite a bit. I would say we refined the vision over time. So we've introduced this notion recently of spatial agents. So at first, the vision was to build this AI that was kind of omnipresent in the environment, so that the environment itself would become smart and see it as if the environment becomes almost aware of itself and can understand all the motion patterns occurring in it. So this is still valid, but we found over time that there was actually lots of local optimization required in that space, where we could have probably more impact with less computational effort in some ways. So that's where we introduce this notion of spatial agents. So spatial agents are see them as ambient AI that you can deploy around you almost in the world. So the way this technology works is that we install or we connect to existing cameras in a physical location. Our system will go from 2D to a 3D reconstruction of the environment to provide to get a good understanding horizontally, but also horizontally of how the space is used, which is very important in many cases, such as robotic, for example. So just having a 2D understanding of the space would lead to quite some inefficiency and problems if you try to automate part of the automation in some ways. So we go from 2D to 3D, and then we decompose all the activities that are occurring in space by doing like segmentation and classification of all the activities. So we can understand, for example, all the steps taken to execute a task or to assemble a product or to move products around in facility, for example, and we can segment all those in chunk. So if I were to assemble a machine, if I pick like a tool, that would be one segmented activity. Then if I like screw something, that's another one. And then if I, piece together some, so we really can classify and segment all of those space-time events that we call. Similarly to what we do in like images with 2D object classification, segmentation, but this time we do that in 4-dimension. And so once we have like all this decomposition, then we can like wrap agents on top of that. And the agent has access to a lot of information about how it could optimize like a given space in a certain way. So imagine that we could deploy like an inventory management agent that basically monitors a given shelf or an area of the warehouse, and when it detects that certain products are running low, because it has like visibility on that through all this decomposition, it can basically ask for refillment by connecting to the ERP system or inventory management system and whatnot. So bridging the gap between the physical and the digital. Another use case could be security. So imagine that you deploy these security agents, spatial agents in space. And given that we have access to cameras and we reconstruct the full environment, you can then deploy locally those agents in different ways, which is quite powerful when you think about it, because through a couple of cameras, you get access to a massive playground of data in which you can deploy different types of agents. So a security agent could, as the name implies, like ensure like the environment is securely used, that workers are putting like the security equipment, for example, and whatnot. Another interesting use case about agent is process optimization, for example. So imagine that you have like a BPMN tool that describes a theoretical process that you should do in your physical environment to assemble a product, like, for example. So you should do step 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that specific order. And if you encounter a problem, then you should do like step B and C and whatever. So you have like this description of the process in the BPMN document, but then how do you ensure that this process is executed correctly in the physical world? If you have a technology that can capture the entire process and segment all the steps, then you can basically assist the worker to perform the process as described theoretically in the BPMN. So bridging again the gap between physical and digital. So that's definitely an extension of our initial vision, which was more to provide like insights about the space. And now we found basically ways to take action in the space through these agents, and not only generating lots of very useful data and building statistical model and probabilistic model about the space that you can query and engage with, but also deploy these agents that will be able to bridge the gap between physical and the digital, facilitating the integration of all those physical activities into your ERP, CRM, and other type of digital systems.
Very cool. Yeah. So are you always integrating into or using existing systems that are already in place in facilities, or do you recommend inputting or installing new cameras in specific areas or some of your own technology? Or is everything that you're doing just on the software side?
Yeah, so it's mostly on the software side. So we're pretty resistant to the type of video input that we receive. Of course, it might require a certain resolution level based on the level of details that we want to capture. But today with most HD cameras, we are able to do like a long run with that. Of course, like if you have a camera that is like 20 feet on the ceiling and you want to read like barcodes that are on the floor, that might require like a different set of gigs in terms of to increase resolution level there. But yeah, otherwise it's mostly not mostly, it's software solution. Yeah.
Sounds like you've got multiple use cases. Yeah, I remember when I was first talking to Erin, shout out Erin, who connected us. Her and I used to work together, and she's awesome. we were talking about your product, and just some of the stuff that blew my mind was, I guess, with like you were talking about the efficiency of a location. And if it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this was just my understanding. Like if, for example, I'm thinking about like a logistics facility or a warehouse, and I'm thinking about I've got this confined space, this is all I've got, and I want to make it more efficient. And we're going to look at how it's currently running with my employees and where things are situated in terms of storage and the workflow and all of that stuff. And then in your simulation, you can put in these new, like, hey, if we input a robot in this section, or if we change the workflow in this way, or if we reshuffle even your storage and input more, whether it's automation or just a different way of storing your inventory, this is how you can optimize it. And this can be the real world result in terms of throughput, revenue, cost saving, etc., before you even touch anything in the physical space. Is that still a focus for you guys?
Yes, totally. Yeah. So I think there's, through the usage of this technology, an opportunity to even like automate the automation, which is a very powerful concept of, I think the automation process is, I mean, there's many steps, but we can decompose it in maybe like 4 core steps, which is identifying the opportunity in the first place, which oftentimes will require some level of expertise, which is also a manual process most of the time. So a robotic auditor will go on site, inspect like the different activities that are occurring, and identify like, repetitive tasks for which there are existing like robotic solutions, such as like, I don't know, like a pelletization solution or whatever. So that step today is still mostly done manually by either like the workers or stakeholders or experts that come on site, right? But if you have cameras and you can actually identify those repetitive tasks, if you can like connect to existing robotic solution and bridge like, oh, here they're doing like this type of activities for which like these existing robotic solution already exist, then you can start to recommend and then identify those opportunities automatically. So that's the first step. Second step is to design a robotic cell. Again, that's a job that an agent could do. Given that we have like good understanding of the input, the output of the cell, but also a complete segmentation of the task that are occurring in that working cell, manual working cell, then you can basically start to assemble a robotic solution that could fulfill the requirements by choosing a base and different arms and different applications, and you can start to select those hardware piece automatically. So automating the second part, which is also done today mostly manually by robotic engineers, for example. Then you get to the integration part. Again, train the robot through reinforcement learning techniques to execute the task. And then, given that we have a 3D view of the physical environment of the customer, we can then inject that virtual robotic cell that is integrated and validate if it actually performs the job as it's supposed to by simulating the cell in action in the virtual world. Basically ready to be hand off to an actual physical robotic integrator that will do the last mile integration, install it on site, fine-tuning the program if needed, and so on. So that's, I think, a very, very impactful example of how these spatial agents can optimize the physical world by even pushing it to the level of automating the automation, which is pretty crazy when you think about it.
100%. I mean, when I heard about it, I think that for me, I mean, I'm no expert, right? But I just speak to a lot of companies, a lot of people. But for me, that seemed like the most real world, impactful, and easy to communicate option or solution. Because when you look at maybe if they're independent warehouse owners, operators, whatever it is, or even in a manufacturing facility as well, they can be low margin environments, low margin companies. They may be people that have, just built up with demand over time and never thought it hasn't been like, first principles thinking of let's just reimagine this whole space and what we can do with it. It's always been like a band-aid fix of, all right, well, let's just put more shelves in. We just need more people. We need this and that. We're going to work more hours and stuff like that. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of the times, it's daunting bringing in technology if you don't know how it's going to have an impact on your company, on your throughput, on your bottom line. Because it's expensive, because you're maybe not tech savvy, because there's no one on staff that can actually manage this. And then maybe you get sold to, I've heard so many stories of people like, oh, we've brought robots in before and we've got automation, but the salesperson did a great job. And again, that's a band-aid. Like it might just be a palletization thing, for example, but then they can't manage it properly, or the people who did work on it have now left, or your sales reps left, and it ends up just in the corner. No one's using it. But this solution that you're offering seems like a much more holistic approach. And then if you partner with like robot integrators or certain brands and things like that, they're not you, but you can give the client, your customer, a overarching view of what the best solution is. Maybe it's just a workflow reshuffle or organizational thing, or implement this one piece of technology, and in time, if you hit this next glass ceiling, there's something else you can implement after that. And then this is what cost looks like. And that to me, I was just like, wow, talk about removing barriers for people and giving them something real world to look at. It was very cool.
Yeah, well, that's one very, very exciting portion for me, which I'm pretty passionate about, is how to communicate those things, right? So someone recently told me, like, it's easy to find optimization to some degree. It's less easy to communicate them and get them adopted, So, and I think one of the main causes for that is because we mostly communicate visually. So, language is semantic is very useful, of course, but when you can actually see the solution in action, an image is worth 1,000 words. So a video sequence of the robot in activity in your site, manipulating your products, that's probably worth an entire like robotic integration document, just that sequence. Especially if you can like even provide, like, as you were mentioning, like ROI estimation that are actually pretty close to ground truth because of all the data available that we have and that we extract from the physical world. So it's not just seeing it, it's also like rationalizing the validity of the solution and whatnot. So that's a part that very excites me. It's about to be able to communicate visually on those optimizations.
So obviously this AI landscape right now is competitive. I know there's other companies doing like spatial AI or simulation and things like that, but it seems pretty unique what you guys are doing. What do you think, if I was to ask you, like, what sets you apart, or someone asked you, like, how is Extend different to other solutions out there? What would you say?
I think it's or maybe we've been pragmatic about what we train versus what we build as supported modules for training. So what that means is basically we work with a great person named Morgan Moss, she's a neuroscientist and now specialized in AI. And we've nerded out so many times, her and I, about all the different brain functions that we have to deal with space and manage space and reason about space. And for example, like in the brain, there's like these a structure called grid cells that are actual hexagonal shaped cells. So they're like spatially organized in hexagonal, which is nuts. So we have them like in the back of the brain. And basically, like as you're sitting in this room right now, in your room right now, you're basically activating neurons in that grid structure, and the wall behind you and all the objects around you are basically mapped to that spatial grid, right? And that doesn't require much training. So we do learn to map object in that structure when we're very young. That's why sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this when we're a kid, but sometimes we get like a little distortion of perception of space, like wall seems far or close, or like distorted view like that. So you're basically training that system to map object in that grid cell system. But there's not much training there. And once you're able to map the environment to that grid cell, then that becomes like in great support to the perception of objects in your environment and process it. And so it's a very efficient way to do it. And I think we basically got inspiration from a lot of these structure and that we've embedded in our system to be able to very efficiently reason about space instead of having to retrain some like large model to hopefully get an understanding of physics and embed those physical system within the model in some hidden space somewhere in there. So we've basically explicitly defined certain portion of those and connected them to the learning system to be able to more efficiently reason about space. Right? So I think that's a big differentiator. So, we just had a breakthrough last week actually. So I was super excited about that. So I'll not reveal too much here today, but we're working on the demo, so I can follow up with you in a couple of weeks once the demo is ready. So we have a functional part of that, but basically found a way to eliminate a good chunk of the specific training required to understand like more specific environments or type of activities.
Okay.
So I think that's certainly a big differentiator is the optimized stack that we found to minimize training requirements. Yep.
Awesome. So that's going to help with like speed to market and then, okay.
Yeah, totally. So before this breakthrough, I think the vision we had was that iPern is the platform that provides like core services to facilitate the creation of these spatial agents. So we have like the 2D, 3D pipelining, we have the activity segmenter. So we have a bunch of modules in there. But still the agent itself would require like specific training sometimes to understand like very specific niche activities. But we still estimated that the cost to build a spatial agent would be reduced by probably up to 80 to 90%, given the fact that iPern does all the heavy lifting of processing the physical reality for the spatial agents. So instead of building a spatial agent that will, like monitor a machine, a specific type of machine that might be a project that would have cost like $1 million to do, with iPern, that same agent can be done like for $100,000, for example. So that was the exciting part. But now what's even more exciting with this breakthrough is now the same agent can probably be done for $10,000, $15,000 now. So
wow.
So that's where we're very excited because I think it will give us the capacity to deploy our spatial agents at a much quicker pace than what we anticipated before.
Amazing. And just to clarify, iPern's the product, the name.
Yeah. So strenght AI is the company name. iPern is the platform names or spatial AI platform names. Yep.
Let's shift gears and talk about team building and company culture, because we know that the team is so important when you're building something so innovative, and a lot of the times, like you mentioned, how to communicate it, who you're going to work with, things like that. What qualities do you prioritize when you're assembling your core team?
So that's an area where I've learned a lot, made many mistakes, and still learning on a daily basis. But certainly I want people that have like a high level of agency. So that's something that I'm looking more and more for. So the shift in culture that we've adopted like last year is to move towards a very lean, small team of highly efficient people, like with high level of agency. So I see them more as like literally team. So it's a team in the real sense of the world where I rely as much on their expertise as they rely on mine. We're building all of this together. Very open communication, very transparent, and no bullshit. Very direct approach, and very clear expectations on terms of output and where we're going. So that's probably the area where I've learned the most is the level of clarity. Sometimes it's very clear in my mind where we're going, and I realized that I thought I was doing some kind of a good job at describing that to people, and oftentimes I was probably just outputting like 40% of the story, and I was like, well, people will figure out the 60% and connect the dots, but that's just opportunity to get lost, and yeah. So I found out that it's actually quite useful to detail probably more than I initially thought I had to, the vision, which makes sense in retrospective, but you learn along the way. So now I spend like quite a bit of time describing where we're going, and just so it's like crystal clear. So I'm trying to do that as much as possible. Now, how we get there, that's where I rely on the high level of agency of the people I team up with to teach me and learn me how to get there. So basically, that's where I'm looking for people that are much smarter than me in their respective areas, and that will basically teach me to do it. Because if I knew it, I would do it. So yeah.
It's true.
But that's a mistake I made though in the past. I read in the because sometimes I was like, well, I'll coach people to get there. And what I found out at our stage is that you need quite a bit of resource to coach people. So, and that's when you're very early in your early stage of the company. I think it's probably wiser to surround yourself with people with the capacity to execute already. And then as you go, of course, then you can start to onboard people that you'll coach more and more.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there, because as you know, recruiting is something that I focus on every day and speak to founders and leaders at different stages. But definitely the early stage, it's so important to have heavy hitters in each vertical. And you, as a founder, as a CEO, you kind of need to know and be self-aware about your strengths, what you bring to the table, but then also your blind spots, your weaknesses, and what's important for the business. Because at an early stage, maybe there's departments or initiatives that aren't important. Maybe you don't really need to focus on marketing or recruiting, as an internal function, or both of those. You can just outsource little bits that you have, but internally you might know that, hey, sales is going to be, or customer experience, customer satisfaction, whatever it is, pre-sales, post, that is priority, because we need a clear line of communication. We need clarity. We need feedback. We need success stories from our customers. Technical is going to be super important. Operations, whatever it is, and then know who to bring on at what level. And like you said, with agency, bought in, understanding the culture, and that you can feel comfortable and confident with outsourcing your stuff to. You empower them. Now that's not your responsibility anymore. You can focus on what you're good at. And you guys are remote. You're obviously in Canada. You've got a team here in the US, and you need people who are adult. And that isn't just an age thing, right? That's maturity. That's knowing how to work. That's being an expert in your field, and empowering them to do what they do best, so you can do what you do best and be the leader that you need to be.
Totally. Yeah, well said. And I really felt the impact of that recently with Aaron Kearns that we both know. So, that's another area that I've learned a lot about. What are the expectations of being like a CEO of a startup versus how you can structure your environment, basically. So I was under the impression that I had like to do more operation type task given the CEO role. And over time, I just realized that my strength, as you just said, is basically vision and technology. So that's where, I shine, I think. And when I team up with Aaron, was before CEO, chief of operation at Hyperloop, for example, and Metropolis, and these different companies. It made such a huge difference in a good way. So just empowering me to do do what I excel at and let her do what she excels at. And, it's a game changer to have like strong people around you. So, yeah, definitely worth taking the time to surround yourself like diligently, especially with a core team at first. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in good hands with Darren. Definitely. Let's look to the future a little bit. What advancements in AI and robotics excite you personally?
Oh, I mean, well, for me, it's the spatial deployment of all that stuff, So for me, that's where it gets really exciting. It's about uh, getting back into the physical world. So, the physical world is amazing. We want to create these virtual experience, but at the same time, you go in the wood, it's an amazing place to live. And, but I feel like there's so much, utility and efficiency with the digital realm that we're just pulled towards that naturally. But if we can bring that technology back in the physical world and deploy robotic solution to free times up to do other things and leverage AI to help us better understand and optimize our space in different ways. I'm very, very excited about what that will unblock in terms of other types of stuff that we can do as a species, as humanity. So I think there's an incredibly amount of stuff. So we'll be combining like the creativity of humans with the efficiency of AI and robotics, for example. I think will just bring the physical world in a different place that will open up like new types of buildings, new types of products. And that's something that really, really excites me. It's to unlock that potential, that creative potential that a lot of humans have. And, or just be able to do stuff at higher scale, more efficiently, be able to craft your stuff where you really like to do, and then get assistance with robotic and AI to do this, the stuff that you don't like doing, for example. So if you like to craft like tables, for example, but you don't like to do the legs, I'll just automate that part and just like spend your time like crafting like this amazing tabletop, for example. I don't, but that feels, that's exciting to me to get back to the physical world more, build human connection and extend our capacity with all that technology that help us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're getting, as a humanity, getting lost too much in the digital world, spending way too much time in the digital world instead of connecting with nature, connecting with each other, doing things in person.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Yeah. Which is a good motivator for me to push this technology. So it might be ironic to some degree, but I don't think it is. To build technology to be less dependent on technology, but that's exactly the goal. Yeah. And because all the most meaningful moment of my life have been with people and rarely online, so it's mostly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
How do you foresee Extend contributing to the developments that you're excited about?
I definitely want to place the company as a leader in the space-time AI revolution. I think that's the next frontier of AI deployment. Now, most of the impact that we're seeing is still in the digital world, and I think there's going to be a lot of that for sure. It's a very natural place to go. Optimize like building agents to browse the web and to do all of these digital tasks. So that's for sure. But as for Extend AI, I think the opportunity for us is to become a leader in the space-time AI place and bridging the gap between physical and the digital, and teaming up with the ecosystem to speed up the adoption of those technologies. So we would like to, at scale, become the spatial brain of the agents out there. So I think that's a good opportunity for us. Team up with all the agents builder in the world, and give them the ability to see, understand, and optimize physical operation as well as digital ones. So that's definitely a place we want to be very active in.
On a broader note, do you think, from your opinion, there's any ethical consideration that the industry should try and address as AI becomes more prevalent? I mean, not so much like the specific area that you operate in, spatial AI, because I think there's only positive impacts there. But just as a whole, we're seeing this huge influx of investment and interest and adoption and companies popping up left, right, and center focused on, you know, broader AI. And AI has been around for ages, but like this whole Gen AI and whatever the bubble goes, the hype goes to, what do you think that the industry needs to consider?
Well, for me, it's really positioning the technology in a way to extend people's ability more than replacing them. So I think that's where the opportunity resides, and I think that's where the focus should be. Of course, there's a way to use that technology to replace folks, but there's also a way to use this technology to just give more power to them. And I think that's a fine line that we shouldn't cross too often. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. So because people like doing what they do typically. So I think about like digital creator, game designer, and stuff like that. It would be nice for them to still be active in that space and use those tools to just create bigger games instead of just replacing them to create the games we know today. So that's and there's many companies that do that. I think there's another set of philosophy out there that is more about replacement. So that's definitely an area where I would like to have an influence in if we can. Yeah.
Love that. And as a serial entrepreneur, someone who's been doing this for a while, do you have any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs out there in the tech industry or AI space? Any words of wisdom from all your years doing this?
It's a little bit maybe cliche, but just do it and jump in the adventure. I think it's a call to adventure. You'll never be ready for it. For sure. There's no moment. It never gets easy. I know people that had built like much more massive business than I had so far, and it's still hard so they still face challenge, and it's still a bunch of novel things that they've never faced before. So I think it's definitely something for which you're never fully prepared. So just jump to it and start. Everybody's learning. That's what I clearly understood now, is that nobody really knows how to build a business like precisely. There's all these learning opportunities everywhere. Nobody really understands the full process. So if you don't, it's okay, because nobody does. So just jump in there, learn, execute, have confidence in your ability to learn and continue rolling, and you'll figure it out. So that's definitely the biggest piece of advice I would give. If you're very young and you think that you need to be more mature, well, guess what? You'll gain the maturity by living the journey. So, and personally, if I see like a 16 years old kid knock at my office door with some ideas, my brain will just explode, and there's just one thing I would want to do is help that kid as much as I can. If you're young, you have some ideas, it's best time to try it out, to build your expertise, to make mistakes, to fail, and then to continue. And that's it.
Love that. Yeah, that's really good advice. One thing that's become very clear to me from doing this show for however long I've done it for now, I can't even remember, but from speaking to so many founders, there isn't a clear path. And like you said, no one knows how to do it properly or knows every single way of building a business and stuff like that. There isn't a quote unquote traditional route or set path that entrepreneurs take, that founders have taken. So it looks different for everyone. And, push through, keep doing it. If that's what you want to do, you're going to learn as you go and mature as you go and make mistakes like everyone. But as long as you keep moving forward and learning, yeah, love that. Look, Carl, thank you so much for being on the show, for sharing all your insights, talking to us about Extend and your products and the impact. And hopefully soon, even maybe by the time this episode airs, we will be able to share about the breakthrough that you had. So please send any links to me and we'll include them in the show notes. But where can listeners learn more about you and Extend AI and follow along?
So we have a few blog posts on Medium. There's our website, extend.ai, and otherwise LinkedIn, social media. You can get in touch with us there. Yeah, that's about it for now.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining
Thank you,
us.
Greg. It was nice chatting.
Yeah, my pleasure. And hopefully I'll speak to you soon.
All right.